The West continues to worry about the Taliban, of course, the ruling in Afghanistan. But the Taliban says that they mean right now no harm, and they are going to respect women's rights. A Taliban spokesperson held a news conference on Tuesday, assuring the world that they are just a more moderate group now. You know, we're the softer, gentler Taliban. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone really believe that, by the way?
Is that where they're going to paint over pictures of women on buildings instead of just destroy the building?
Right. Yeah. They'll nicely ask women to not drive. They'll nicely ask women to cover their faces and legs, right? But we'll see, right? I mean, I don't know. They purport to be Islamic fundamentalists, so we'll see if they adhere to that what they considered their Islamic law. We'll see. Here's a question.
Maybe what they'll do is they'll actually use all the training that we've given them over the years. I mean, we pretty much created and helped create them, so maybe they'll use all the stuff we taught them, because we obviously taught them the right way to run a democracy. We were at least helping them, pay them to learn how to protect one or create one or something. So hopefully all of that great stuff we gave them over the years just comes in super handy.
Yeah, I mean, look, we gave them helicopters. We gave them Black Hawk helicopters. We gave them weapons, or not directly. We gave them to the Afghan army, who then laid them down in front of the Taliban, and then they were able to seize them. So, in a roundabout way, we gave that stuff over to them. But here's a question: do we find that hard to believe because the media tells us that the Taliban is not going to change, or is not going to have a government that would actually lead its people? I mean, who knows, right? I mean, if you tune in the mainstream media, they're telling you that it's never going to happen, right?
Think about this, though. Well, the Taliban's main goal was probably, outside of us training them and everything, was to get us the hell out of there in the first place. Right. So if we're the hell out of there, maybe if we're gone, they could actually come to some sort of government on their own that they could progress. We don't know. Just because, like we're a terrorist organization, if you want to call a terrorist organization, call a spade, and, we're coming back here like nobody's holding us, like thinking that we're going to come back here and just destroy our country and take away women's rights, even though we're not feeding people. We got a huge swath of hunger and everything in this country. That stuff doesn't matter, but maybe they're going to do well. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe we give them an opportunity to. Well, actually, we have no choice, right? But the honest answer is we don't know. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, the Taliban leader gave an interview to a female news anchor on Tuesday, which is pretty shocking, something that the Taliban of old would not have done, right?
Right. And you know what the bottom line is, though? It's not our problem.
Right.
It's not our problem.
It's not our problem. Although George W. Bush, who I love, Caitlin Johnston wrote a piece yesterday. She said, now's the time for George W. Bush to shut the F up. Like he should not be talking right now. The guy that got us go paint dog pictures. The guy that got us into a 20-year war, is now sticking his nose in, saying how sad he is for the humanitarian plight of the people. Right? If he was so concerned about that, then he wouldn't have been bombing them indiscriminately for many, many years. And he said that this Taliban leader said that women's rights would be protected under the new regime, but gave no details of how exactly they would be protected. He also promised that no Afghans would be punished for having helped the former Western government or Western forces. Great. But another interesting plan is emerging this morning that could potentially change Afghanistan forever. And I don't want to bury the lead here, but it has to do with Bitcoin. And it could have saved it from the ruin that it's in right now. So a lot of Bitcoin maximalists, these are people who believe, in many ways, I'm not a big Bitcoin maximalist. I'm certainly a Bitcoin supporter, and I own a lot of Bitcoin, but I'm not like a Michael Saylor in that I think it is the only cryptocurrency that could help the world. I believe in others as well, Ethereum and so forth. But Bitcoin maximalists also wondered basically out loud how the cryptocurrency could fix the country's problems, Afghanistan's problems, or if it could have totally prevented the war there in the first place. Eric Voorhees, one of the Bitcoin's early public advocates and CEOs, sent this out, and he said, an enormous amount of cash just fell into the hands of the Taliban because cash can't be truly secured. And he said, basically, he said that basically people in Afghanistan are trying to withdraw their money from banks, but the top bankers have all left town. Likely no Afghans will get any of their hard-earned money back. This should show you how important Bitcoin is for the world.
But how would they have gotten their money? Bitcoin either?
Well, it's all in a digital wallet. You don't need to go to a bank. I mean, this is the exact same thing that happened to Greece. Like, when will we learn our lesson, right?
Right, but won't infrastructure, so if banks are going down, won't infrastructure go down too as far as internet and stuff? Like, who's upkeeping all that stuff? Like, did those people leave?
if you've got Wi-Fi, if you've got cellular service in some capacity, if you've got Wi-Fi somewhere, someone's going to have Wi-Fi. There's going to be some way to get online. Right? There's going to be some hot spot that you could have access to. But the bottom line is, like, it's all digital. So it would be held to you permanently to your digital wallet. Like a run on the bank, like we saw in Greece when they had their crisis. People went to the Grecian banks to try to get their money out. And the Greek banks were like, we don't have your money. They're like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense because I took my Greek fiat currency and put it into your bank. What the hell happened? Where's my money? We don't have it. Because we don't have to hold your money in a bank because that's the law. That's how bankers' laws work. You put $100 in the bank, they don't have to hold $100 in the bank. They can lend out your $100 now, fully as a mortgage to someone else.
It's like, I don't have your money. I don't have your money. It's in Tom's house. It's in Fred's house.
Yeah, go check his house. It's not here. But if you understand Afghanistan, you understand obviously Afghanistan the situation there is incredibly complex, but fundamentally it's a symptom of a military empire having overextended itself. And we shouldn't pretend that Bitcoin will fix the immediate suffering there, but it absolutely helps solve the problem of empire by starving the empire of tax revenues, and it would curtail its ability to print currency for funding of wars. Think about that. Like, if you don't have this kind of currency, you can't be funded. How are you going to foot the bill for this? You were using poppy fields before, right? They were selling heroin basically to the United States and the rest of the world to fund the wars, right? Well, if you don't have that currency, how are you going to fight these wars? Not only that, it's an empowering piece of the equation here, because if you think about this, as Jimmy Song tweets here, our government has stolen trillions in value from us to fund a war that did nothing but bring death and destruction to millions. Bitcoin can't come fast enough. Yeah, imagine if the government couldn't steal money from us to fight this type of war. I mean, if you think about it, it's a multi-pronged question here, right? Because Bitcoin, right? A Bitcoin world is a world of smaller governments that don't invade and they don't occupy foreign nations for 20 years, right? The bigger the country is, then you have the violence and destruction. But even in a war-torn, poverty-stricken country, Bitcoin can still help. If you're your own bank, then you don't have to worry about a run on the bank, right? You don't have to worry about whether or not the bankers are even in town anymore.
And the more we keep things out of their control, the better. Because, imagine if they didn't have as much pull over our finances. It's like anything that you want the quality to go down and the price to go up, give it to the federal government. And right. Because they can't manage anything. But if we had our own money system and they weren't in control of it, they couldn't take our money and do what they're doing with it. They couldn't start all these wars and everything. We could pay because right now, if they want our money, they can take it by force. It's funny. I had no idea, but I had child support that I paid back in this was a long time ago. And there was a fee, I guess, every year that you had to pay for the child support that I was never aware of. And then one day I just had $800 come out of my bank account. And I was like, what in the heck? $800 just disappeared out of my account. The government totally had access to go in and just take money right out of my account.
Wow.
And they couldn't do that with my Bitcoin wallet.
No, it's the same thing that happened during stimulus, right? I mean, so many people who had issues with government, the government was able to steal their money right out of their account when they got their stimulus payments, right? But I think this is a really interesting case here that Bitcoiners think crisis in Afghanistan could have been prevented with Bitcoin. I mean, think about it, right? The government couldn't, as they're taking over these towns, seizing weapons, seizing money, they're seizing all sorts of capital. They're seizing US dollars, just bags and bags of US dollars, right? Then on top of that, the people try to go and get money out of the bank, and they can't. So they're relying on this fiat government currency. They're there in the lines at the bank, and all the bankers have left town. They can't get any money. Now they're screwed. So not only would it not have funded the actual war and the takeover, it would have actually helped the people who are now trying to leave and get out of this. It might not have ever happened. They might not have had to get out of the way of anything. right? Like the steamroller that's now rolling through there, they might not have had to leave at all. I mean, if you think about it, none of the, and what they're basically saying here is that none of this, from U.S. military intervention in the first place to yesterday's bank run, would have happened had it been for Bitcoin. Some of the staunchest supporters of Bitcoin argue. This should show you how important Bitcoin is for the world. Control your money. And
the thing is too, like, yeah, that is possible. But if the infrastructure is not there, like, who in Afghanistan is taking Bitcoin as payment? They can't go to the grocery store and use their Bitcoin. They can't go to the fast food restaurants and use their Bitcoin. Like
what I'm arguing, and I think what they're arguing, is that if that infrastructure was there, like El Salvador, El Salvador is going to be official with Bitcoin in just a few weeks. I think September, I forget the exact date in September. El Salvador will adopt it as legal tender, and they will not charge you a transaction fee or anything like that. You can go to the store and use it as legal tender. So if they had that infrastructure set up, and then that's where this would be. And what I'm saying is, if the infrastructure was there, and if Bitcoin was the standard, and if we use this as a standard, we wouldn't have this war, and we wouldn't have these people starving. We wouldn't have these people trying to flee, run to the bank to try to get money out. This worthless currency. Like, what good is Afghanistan currency right now? I mean, you want to trade some Bitcoin for Afghanistan currency?
And think of how many things around the world are manipulated by basically the U.S. dollar. I mean, our dollar is probably the most manipulative, but think about how many lives money manipulates, and if we could have complete control. So I agree with it, but I want, it's like, why is there such a slow rollout on the infrastructure?
Well, I think because you have these governments who are scared of it, and it seems like you have a lot of third world countries right now who are adopting it. You have countries in Africa that are now saying we're going to make Bitcoin a standard, legal tender. El Salvador making it a legal tender. And it's a lot of the countries that have struggled with poverty are now saying, we see this as our salvation. Like, this could become our salvation. Won't it be interesting to see these countries who have, for just thousands of years, hundreds of years, been under the heel of the empires, the British Empire, the American Empire, the German Empire, all of these countries that have just been stomped on for generations, now adopt an entirely different standard and become some of the wealthiest countries in the world? I mean, I'm just waiting for that to happen. It's going to happen.
And I think, well, too, and I think you're right, but I think it also, you have those countries, the countries that are embracing it, but I think that there are some countries that feel like, the government's going to lose power if they incorporate that system. They're like, okay, we can't let this happen because then we're going to lose control. And you guys know how we can manipulate markets. We can manipulate people. We can get them to do what we want through the money that we control and we can print. But, without that, they lose that.
Right. And that's China, right? I mean, China fears Bitcoin, fears cryptocurrency.
Well, that's us too.
We do, and I'm waiting to see on this. I interviewed Ron Paul on my show a few months ago, and one of the things he said is he's a big proponent of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, but he's always skeptical, of course, of government, and he believes, well, government's paying lip service that they're supportive of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, et cetera. But I'll wait and see whether or not the Fed is going to yield power, right? Are they going to, the U.S. dollar or Bitcoin? Is the Fed going to allow Bitcoin to become some sort of a major standard in the United States? But I don't know that they have a choice. I mean, what are you going to do? Well, other than like strip mining capabilities out of people's hands? I mean, what are you going to do?
I think the legislation, though, that we just saw with all the Bitcoin language and going after Bitcoin investors and stuff like that shows us that they're scared of it or that they don't want it. I would think that means some big money somewhere doesn't want this.
Yeah, and I think, though, you also saw on the other side of it, you saw the Bitcoin lobby come together. I mean, Elon Musk and all of these people, and they got the language removed. So that force, it showed that in Washington, that was a force to be reckoned with. And I wasn't happy about that. Like, they all came together and said, no, get this language out of these bills. And they did. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds in government. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Drop me a comment below. Do you think Bitcoin could save Afghanistan or could have saved Afghanistan? Drop me a note below in the comments thread. I mean, just look at the value. Look at Bitcoin, like Ethereum, Bitcoin rocketing up. Imagine if, like, the Afghan people had a currency that is up 600% this year. Imagine that. Instead of standing in lines like this, hoping to get some money out of this crappy bank.
Isn't it crazy to think that, like the lobbyist thing, like lobbyists can go into Washington and they can lobby and pay money to get something in a bill, and then other people can go lobby and get it out of a bill, but we can't say a damn thing. We can't, like our voices that we're saying, no, that's not what we want. That's not what we want. That doesn't matter. You have to buy legislation.
Right. You have to be Elon Musk and have billions.
Yeah.
And
because otherwise that would have been in that bill. And what would have happened then to Bitcoin? Like people would be paying they just wanted it taxed or what, right?
They wanted to treat everybody who had like basically a digital wallet as a broker. So if you had a digital wallet and you could buy and sell Bitcoin, like then you were a broker subject to brokerage laws. Like what? So you mean my Coinbase account? I'm now a broker?
That's like if I buy my own house, I have to sign up as a real estate broker.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's considered property. So when I sell my house, am I now considered a broker? Like, what does that do to the real estate lobby? Which is massive in Washington. Hey, I'm selling property. You've deemed Bitcoin as property. So if I sell my house, I'm technically a broker, just like the broker that has to get a broker's license. So that was the pushback on that. And it fell apart, which was good. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.